He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Supervillains Explored. Keeping with my aspirations to not become too acclimated to the villainous characters from the big two comic companies, I've decided to plunge into the depths of the 2000 AD Judge Dredd comics verse, with a character that has become Dredd's most popular and frequently reoccurring foe, Judge Death. Judge Death is a very different type of character from those who were initially featured in the 2000 AD comics. Most of the bad guys that the Mega City 1 street judges went up against consisted of gang lords, mutants, corrupt judges, evil clones, all pretty standard fare for a post-apocalyptic sci-fi world. Judge Death, on the other hand, was not only a supernatural character, but one who hailed from an alternate dimension called Dead World, and led a group of four horsemen-style undead street justices called the Dark Judges. Judge Death's origins go something like this. Death was originally a highly sadistic and malevolent young boy named Sidney, who gained great pleasure from simply hurting things by inflicting pain on them. This was evident due to the fact that he brutally slaughtered 3 bullies from his high school. But Sidney would eventually become a street judge, aka the order of soldiers that Dredd belongs to, but only in a different universe. Anyways, Sidney reveled in the power that he was given as a judge, and basically used his badge as an excuse to murder as many criminals as he could, thus earning him the nickname of Judge Death. Sidney had also rallied 3 other judges who slavishly followed in his actions and philosophies, and they would use any conceivable excuse they could imagine to justify their killing of both criminals and non-criminals. They, of course, came to be known as the Dark Judges. But after some time on the force, Sidney would come to a realization. The only real way for justice to prosper would be if there was no life to begin with. In his mind, life itself was the progenitor of all crime, and that by wiping out all life, there would be no more crime. Sidney would encounter 2 witches named Phobia and Nausea, who would eventually help Sidney and his fellow judges to carry out their ultimate goal, the extermination of all life. The 4 evil judges were transformed into undead, ghost zombie judges, thus being able to enforce their contorted ideals without any hypocrisy. And with that act, the new and improved Dark Judges set out and wiped out the entire population of their world. Judge Death would propose the idea of traveling to the alternate dimension of Cursed Earth, the home of Dredd's home city, Mega City 1. The other Dark Judges opposed his idea, though, but that didn't really stop Death from traveling through to cause destruction anyways. When Death arrived in Mega City 1, he attempted to carry out his version of justice, but was eventually stopped and killed by Judge Joseph Dredd and its partner Judge Anderson. Death's spirit, however, managed to bind itself to Anderson's body. The 3 other Dark Judges learned of Death's failure and traveled to Mega City 1 to rescue him. Death manages to create a new body for himself and reunited with his old comrades. They then proceed to wreak havoc and destruction across the city, leading to a large number of battles between them and Dredd. After a number of victories, though, Dredd and Anderson manage to banish the Dark Judges back to their native dimension once and for all. And a few years after the Dark Judges were supposedly defeated, something very unexpected happened. In the storyline entitled A Letter to Judge Dredd, Dredd had been feeling a large amount of doubt about the legal system he had been strictly following for so long. In the following storyline, in The Tale of the Dead Man, Dredd was commissioned to oversee the assessment of a new rookie judge named Judge Kraken. But when a traffic accident had killed his best friend Judge Murphy, Dredd lashed out in fury and almost killed the drivers in blind rage, only to be stopped by Kraken. After this incident, Dredd decided to resign from the judges and take the long walk, the departure into the radioactive wasteland outside the city and never to return. Now you may be wondering, what does any of this have to do with the Dark Judges? Well, after Judge Kraken inherits Dredd's role as senior judge, the Sisters of Death, aka the two witches Phobia and Nausea, who are now spectral beings, actually use their powers and influence to manipulate Judge Kraken into freeing the Dark Judges from the Void. With the Sisters aiding them, the Dark Judges seize control of Mega City 1. And in an event that caused the deaths of 60 million people, they took possession of the judges and transformed the city into the necropolis, their vision of perfection. But after some time, a resistant movement of cadet judges led by Dredd, Anderson, and Judge Magruder would rise up from the lowest parts of the city and defeat the evil forces that would take control of it. The Sisters were banished back to their dimension, and the majority of the Dark Judges were imprisoned except for Death, who managed to escape into the Cursed Earth. After this event, there was a crossover event that would follow where Dredd would actually team up with Batman, and the two heroes would pretty much team up to fight against both Judge Death and the Joker, respectively. But that's all I really wish to discuss concerning Judge Death. Considering that the 2000 AD comics are a real-time, ongoing series, I could be sitting here talking about these characters for a really long time. So I have to draw the line somewhere. But for my opinion on Judge Death and his gang, I have to say I like what I've seen. The thing about certain characters like Judge Dredd or the Punisher that separates them from traditional superheroes is that, well, they kill people. Dredd doesn't really have what you would call a highly extensive rogues gallery, because he usually shows no mercy to any criminal leader that he comes across. But the one thing that separates Dredd from Death is that Dredd is not really a character who enjoys having to kill people. He knows he has to carry out the law, but he's still human. Hell, the main reason he left the city right before the Dark Judges took it over was because he felt like he couldn't control his violent impulses any longer. Death, on the other hand, revels in violence and carnage. He is the epitome of abuse of authority. We're talking about a guy here who had an entire school of children murdered on the excuse of noise pollution. This is a guy who uses the law to indulge in his sick, fucked up fantasies. And that is what makes him a great archenemy for Dredd. And if I remember correctly, Judge Death was actually the main bad guy in a PC game called Judge Dredd, Dredd vs. Death. And that alone shows you just how popular of a character Death is. And he's probably the most common character who's brought up when discussing Dredd's enemies. And I actually recently saw in an interview that Alex Garland, the guy who wrote the screenplay for the new Judge Dredd movie, said he wants to actually incorporate the Dark Judges into the sequels. Well, along with a few other villains from the Dredd comics, but to that I say, fucking go for it, man. Anyways, people, I'm FW Waller, and that's all I gotta say, so thanks for watching.